In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to make these 2-hour slippers. They're very cool, they're very simple. The instructions I give you will help you make them any size you want with the smallest bit of alteration. The formula is super simple, and you will be able to use your bulkiest yarns to make these great and fun slippers. They're comfy, they're cozy. Give them as a gift, keep them for yourself. Make them specifically to fit feet that sometimes have trouble finding slippers or socks to fit them under normal circumstances. You can do all this with this pattern. For interest and support that allows me to contribute new content and weekly videos. Help us all grow together by tapping that subscribe bar, notification bell, and like buttons. I look forward to your feedback and always value your comments. Let's get started. So to begin with, I'd like to start with yarn choices. For this particular slipper pattern, you really are going to be interested in using a blanket size yarn or an extra bulky, which is going to be about a 6 or a 7 in bulk. So using this faux fur yarn would make your slipper super fluffy, or just simply using this standard blanket yarn would add a nice bit of bulk and coziness to your slipper. Also, if you wanted it to be soft, you could certainly use a velvet yarn. However, the velvet yarns are usually about a 4 weight, and so you would want to double that up. And for this project, I happen to choose a Roving yarn. It's pretty loosely twisted, made from recycled silk. This product comes from Darn Good Yarn, and it's a Marsala worsted yarn. Anyhow, this is the yarn that I chose to make the slippers that I made with. Now, for this particular yarn, again, just what I had suggested with the velvet yarn, I'm going to actually double up this worsted yarn so that I can have a thicker yarn to work with. And this particular yarn is not going to be as thick or as fluffy as, let's say, the blanket yarn or this faux fur yarn, right? But that's okay. My pattern's going to work out just fine. It's just going to have a slightly different look. And I thought I'd mention this because each of these yarns, which is perfectly suitable for this pattern, are going to give you a slightly different look. So you're going to decide, and you have many options as to what's going to work best for you. Now, if you hang tight towards the end of this video, I'm going to discuss other options that you can do with your slippers in order to make them look a little more professional. Maybe if you're giving it as a gift, or you just want that look for yourself, or to give you options that are available to you that will help you make your slippers slip free if that is something you are interested in. The basics of what I'm going to need to make the slipper, and this is all you need to make the slipper with. I'll get into the options again, as I said before, later in the video, but what I'm showing you now is everything you need to make a comfortable, cozy slipper. Anything else is just extra. I'm going to need a tape measure, a yarn needle, of course, a stitch marker, a pair of scissors. For this project, I am using a size K hook, or 6.5 millimeter. And then my yarn. So since I'm not actually using a blanket yarn, I am using my yarn doubled up that I will be using for this particular project. So this is just me. If you're using a blanket yarn for yours, you don't need to double it up. So to begin with, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to chain 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now this is going to be the beginning point for everyone, no matter what size slipper you're making in terms of adult size slippers, whether it be a female for a female or for a male. This technique can be used to alter the size of your slipper to fit any foot you want it to. So I have 5. Next, I'm going to single crochet in the second chain from the hook. Then I'm going to single crochet in the next 2 chains, so 1 and 2. And then in the last chain, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to single crochet 3. So 1, 2, 3. Next, I'm going to single crochet in the next 2 chains. And before I get any further, let me go ahead and put the stitch marker right here on this very first single crochet that we single crocheted. Now we're back here in this chain 1 space that we kind of started off with, but in that space I am going to put 2 single crochets. So that'll give us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 count here for the toe of our slipper. And this is where we're going to begin. From here on in, we're going to work in a spiral. So these 3 stitches right here will be the turning stitch for the right hand side of this toe, or left hand side, whichever way it works out for you, depending on which foot this is going to go on, or the opposite side with the 3 single crochets in that chain stitch. But we're going to work in a spiral. And so what I'm going to do is in this next stitch, which will still be part of our turning stitch, I am going to place a half double crochet. So there's no joining, it's all simply a spiral. And then in the next stitch, I'm going to place another half double crochet. And then I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to move that stitch marker up, because again, this will be my first stitch for this second round, or what I consider to be the first stitch for the second round. And then in the next stitch, I'm going to do another half double crochet, and then in the stitch after that, a half double crochet. And that's the first stitch for this corner stitch where we had the 3 single crochets. So that brings us to the second single crochet on the corner. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 3 half double crochets into that corner stitch. So 1, 2, and then 3. Then I'm going to do the half double crochet in my next 3 single crochets. So 1, 2, and then 3. And that brings us back to our 3 stitches right here in the second corner. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a half double crochet in the first corner, and then I'm going to do 3 half double crochets in that second corner stitch. And then in the last corner stitch, I'm going to do a 1 half double crochet, and that brings us back around again to the beginning stitch for our third round. Now, if you're dealing with somebody who has a small foot, you might be done with doing the tip of your slipper. You might just be at that point where you're going to just start your regular rounds until you get the appropriate length of this first half of your slipper. For me, for the slippers I'm making, I'm going to need to do a couple of more rounds. Now, the formula that I have discovered that seems to work is if you take a measurement of the circumference of the mid part of your foot right over the instep and measure that in inches, then multiply that by 2 and you will have the appropriate amount of stitches needed for each round. Then you want to measure the length of your foot from the toe to the center of your instep to determine how many rounds you need to crochet for the body of your slipper before moving on to the heel gusset. Okay, so now for my slipper, I'm going to have 2 more rounds. And so I'll go through the 2 rounds with you so you can get an idea on what that looks like. Kind of just repeat it a couple of times. And, you know, you've probably gotten it before I finish repeating it the next couple of times, or you might need the next couple of times to kind of really understand what I'm trying to explain. But we're just going to go ahead and do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove my stitch marker again. And then I'm going to, with my first stitch of round 3, because every stitch after this, for this next part of the foot, is going to just be a half double crochet. I'm going to then again put my stitch marker right there again at the first stitch of round 3. And then I'm going to half double crochet each stitch until I get to that corner again. And in the middle stitch, or that second corner stitch, I am going to then half double crochet 3 in that same stitch. So 1, 2, 3. Then I'm going to continue half double crochet until I get to the next corner. Okay, so now I'm into that middle corner stitch once again. There's going to be a 1, 2, and 3, and then the last stitch of that corner stitch. So some of you might decide that this is appropriate for your tip of your foot size, and then you would just continue, you'd skip the next part. But for me, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do 1 more round. And that'll give me the appropriate count for the circumference of the foot that I'm making these for. You may need to do an additional round or 2 in order to get the appropriate circumference, and that's fine. Do as many rounds or as few rounds as you need to in order to get the appropriate circumference of your foot. Just refer back to the formula. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take the stitch marker off, because I won't need it anymore, because I'm just doing the 1 more round and I can see where my last corner stitch is going to be at. So again, half double crochet all the way around. And just remember, you know, that these slippers are so simple. And now this one, because I'm using a pretty straight, non-fluffy kind of yarn. This yarn is actually more like more almost like material kind of spun into a yarn, as opposed to like what you would consider traditional yarn. So it gives my slippers kind of a little bit of a different look. So you can see where you're going to actually see, you know, the holes in this slipper. Whereas if I used the faux fur, you know, or the blanket yarn, you're not going to see these holes because they're going to be covered up and filled in with the texture of the actual thicker, bulkier yarn you might be using. But this is good for me because the person I'm making this piece for, they don't like their foot to feel like it doesn't have any airflow around it. So this is why I decided to use this particular type of yarn and this approach. So keep going. Another really good thing about this design, which I think is really kind of cool, say you're making this for somebody who is, let's say they're suffering from edema and they have one foot or one leg that's really considerably larger than the other foot, you know, but they want to have, you know, cozy feet and they want their slipper to match. And so it's a great way. Or sometimes it's hard to find slippers that actually, you know, fit you the way you want them to, because you have really long and narrow feet, or your feet are kind of short and chunky. Not all feet are created the same. And so this really allows you to tailor, this particular design really allows you to tailor the slipper to the foot in a way that a more structured pattern isn't going to allow you to. Okay, so I'm as wide as I'm going to be. And the next thing that I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to measure the length of the foot. Once you've reached the length of your toe and first half of your foot, you should have something that looks like this. Now, my particular count worked out to be 22. And what I want to do with that 22 is I want to break it up into, I don't know, approximately divide it by 4. So that's going to give me 5-6 stitches approximately. And so what I want to do is then I want to take a look and I want to say, okay, well, the middle of my foot comes down this way, right? So from the end of my last row to this end of my front row, I'm looking at about 11 stitches. And so I want 5 or 6 stitches right in the middle, because this is going to be the very top of my foot. This is where the opening is going to start. So I'm going to pop in on either side a couple of stitches. So I have my 1 stitch marker here, and I'm going to move that over by 2. So I'm going to move that over to this stitch right here. And I'm going to take my 2nd stitch marker, and from the other side I'm going to bring it in about another 2 stitches. And that will give me 6 stitches for the top part of my foot. And that's what I'm going to go with. So this part I'm going to leave open. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up my piece right here, and now what I want to do is I want to close my spiral. And how I'm going to do that is the next stitch I'm going to make a single crochet, and then in the stitch after that I'm going to slip stitch. Then I'm going to turn my work. I'm going to chain 2. I'm going to half double crochet in the same stitch. And then I'm going to half double crochet in each additional stitch all the way until right here to the stitch before I hit my next marker. So again, half double crochet. This is going to be the heel part, or the heel, gusset, if you will, of the slipper. Okay, so I'm here. Again, I'm going to turn my work. I'm going to chain 2. I'm going to half double crochet in the same stitch. And then I'm going to half double crochet in each additional stitch after that. I'm going to repeat this until I've reached the desired length of this back heel gusset part of my slipper. Once you have your heel gusset where you'd like to have it, the length that it needs to be in order to fit the foot you're making this for, I'm going to come to the back, and I'm going to then, in the opposite side of that gusset, once I've folded the heel up to touch corner to corner, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to slip stitch right into that corner stitch. And then I'm going to chain 1. And what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to do a crab stitch, or a reverse single crochet in each stitch all the way around my foot opening. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with a crab stitch or reverse single crochet, it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. I'm going to insert my hook into the stitch that is to my right if I'm right-handed, to your left if you're left-handed. I'm going to yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, and then pull that loop through. Then again, I'm going to go into the next stitch. I'm going to yarn over and pull that loop through. I'm going to yarn over and pull that through. And that's going to give me a nice edging for the top of my slipper opening. And this is all you need, especially if you're turning this into, a more simple looking slipper and you don't want the option of putting any kind of fluffy trim on it or any kind of trim at all. You just want a nice clean edging. This really is the perfect stitch for that. I'm going to remove my stitch markers because I do not need them anymore. And I'm going to continue my edging all the way until I get back to the back seam of my gusset, at which time I'm going to finish off, but I'm going to leave myself a nice long tail because it's that tail I'm going to use to sew the seam of the back of my slipper together. So at this point, your slipper is completely finished. At least as far as the basic slipper is concerned, this will work just fine, especially as a house slipper. It'll end up being a nice kind of fuzzy, sort of bobby sock kind of a slipper if you like. But I have options. So I wanted to dress my slippers up a little bit and I wanted to give them more of a professional appearance. So I made a trim. Now the trim itself, while not necessary, I basically made from some Caron coffee latte kind of yarn that they have. That's this is kind of fuzzy yarn. And I simply chained a length of chain that was the same length as the circumference of the opening of my slipper. And then I went and I did 3 rows of double crochets. That's it. Left a nice long tail. So now what I can do with this is I can just simply wrap it around that crab stitch we just did and sew this on all the way around, and it gives it a nice trim. In addition, I wanted an insole just to give the slipper a little more comfort. And so you can go to the store and you can purchase any insole you like that will fit into your slipper. However, if you don't want to purchase an insole, if you have, let's say a nice sheet of thickish felt, go ahead and cut your insole out of the felt. That makes a lovely soft insert for any slipper. Also, while there are many approaches, and I'll get into what some of those other approaches are, I wanted to put a sole on the base of my slippers. And so I just took some leather, some scrap leather that I had lying around, and I cut it in the shape of the bottom of the foot of my slipper. And then I will sew it onto the bottom of my slipper. Now you can do this a couple of different ways. I chose to do like a whole insole shaped sole for my slipper. I could have just simply, if I only had a couple of small scraps of the leather, I could have simply just done a small circle or oval for the heel and a small circle and oval for the ball of my foot, and that would have worked out just fine. These also act as a kind of slip resistance to the bottom of your slipper if that's what you feel you need. Now there are other ways that people make their slippers and their socks non-slip. So if you want another option other than leather for the sole of your slipper, kitchen and storage drawer and shelf liners are a pretty good one. They're easily found and you can cut them to fit pretty easily and sew them on, and they work pretty well in terms of being non-slip. Another option is a fabric option that's sold specifically as a non-slip sole product. And you can pick this up on Amazon or at your local fabric store usually. It's another option. Again, easy to cut. Other options that you can find at your craft store, and of course this particular product is not inclusive. There are several different products that go by different names, but this is one of those products that comes out kind of like you might use in a glue bottle, and you just kind of place the little dots, you squeeze the little dots or the squiggly lines or whatever kind of design you'd like to place on the bottom of your slipper or your sock, and then just let it dry and cure, and eventually once that happens, you will have a non-stick surface. Or at least that's what that says. I mean, these products aren't inclusive, and I certainly don't endorse any one of these products over the other ones. What I'm telling you and showing you here are just the different options that are available to you if you choose to put a non-slip surface onto the bottom of your socks or slipper. And then also, people have had really good results with glue guns. Just put in your glue insert and make your dots with the glue. I've heard that some people have really felt that they've had good results with this. This is pretty economical for them because most people already have glue guns and the glue sticks that go with them. Now's the time for me to say goodbye. So until I see all you wonderful and creative fiber artists again, stay crafty, stay amazing. Bye-bye now. Have a great weekend.